Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Got a lot to cover in a short period of time today. Welcome. Appreciate you being here. Hopefully you're having a good show so far. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to spend an hour or two with somebody, I kind of like to know where they're coming from. So let me give you just brief background. My name is Tom Grandy. I'm out of Owensboro, Kentucky. Technically, I'm an industrial engineer. Graduated from Virginia Tech way back in 1970, before most of you were probably born. Worked in industry for a few years and got involved in small business about 35 years ago. Our company, Grandy and Associates, the vision has been the same since day one. That's to help you, the service contractor, come to a place of maturity and profitability. Basically, every program we have is designed to help you understand your business a little bit better and hopefully make a little bit more money than you did before. That's our objective. Before we get started today, I want to share with you my favorite true story because it kind of leads into what we're doing today. And this was probably 15 years ago, so it just kind of discounts some of the things I'm going to say in terms of the time period. But I'm sure many of you travel a lot, and I'm sure many of you have been to the Denver, Colorado airport. And if you have, it's in the middle of nowhere. Denver's here, the airport's here, and where I was way over here, kind of a triangle. And I'd finished the program and I needed to leave real early the next morning to catch my flight. And I had about a 45-minute to an hour flight to arrive to the airport. So I scheduled a cab knowing that they don't usually show up on time. I needed him to be there at 5:30, so I scheduled him for 5:15 in the morning. And just to be sure, I came down just a little bit early the next morning, got down there about 5 or 10 after 5, and lo and behold, my taxi's waiting for me. First tip-off, something's different. Walked over to the cab driver, got in that cab about 5:15 in the morning, sat down in my seat. It was an elderly Chinese man, one of the most fascinating individuals I've ever run into in my entire life. I sat down with him in the cab. He didn't say good morning. He didn't say how are you. He didn't say did you rest well last night. His first words out of his mouth was, I make lots and lots of money. So that's kind of odd, but I kind of ignored him. It's early in the morning. Wait a couple more minutes. He said, I make a lot of money. And I said, well, after a while, you got to start asking some questions, right? So I said, well, I understand you make a lot of money, but you're a cab driver, right? Yeah, I'm a cab driver, but I make lots of money. And I said, well, where do you live? And he said, I live out here near your hotel. And I said, man, isn't it hard? Drive all the way in Denver, get your cab, drive all the way back out here to get me? He said, no, you don't understand. He said, I own my own cab. I said, okay. I said, when do you start and when do you quit? And he said, I usually start about this time every morning because I got somebody who wants to go to the airport. I start out with a really good fare. And he said, I end up the day, mid-afternoon, late afternoon, as soon as I get somebody sort of close to where I live. He said, but I do lots of other things. And I said, what else do you do? He said, I buy old houses and I restore them and I sell them. And I said, you do? He said, yeah. He said, I said, how many do you do a year? And he said, 2 on a good year, maybe 3. I said, well, he said, while I'm restoring those houses, you know what I do? And I said, no, what do you do? He said, I rent them out to people. While you're repairing them and redoing them? Yeah. I said, well, that's a really good idea. You can save your money at the bank from the loan and that sort of thing. And then that make, no. He said, don't understand. He said, I only pay cash for my houses. I said, okay. And then he said, after I get them all fixed up and ready to sell them, he said, I only sell to Chinese and Vietnamese. I'm thinking, well, good, at least he's taking care of his people. He kind of grinned a little bit. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, in the Denver area, Chinese, Vietnamese, they don't understand property value. They pay more than Americans will. I said, now I'm beginning to understand. I said, what else do you do? He said, if you came to my house right now, and again, this was many years ago, you'd find 7 TV sets and 6 VCRs. I said, what in the world do you do with 7 TV sets and 6 VCRs? He said, I tape every sporting event in this country, not just football, basketball, etc. I do track, I do field, I'll find things like that, horse races, anything on there sports-wise, I tape it. I said, why in the world do you do that? He said, because once a week I take all those tapes, I put them in a box, and I ship them off to China. Now, my brother lives in China. He has a restaurant. People won't pay to see a sporting event, but they'll come to a restaurant to watch it. He said, I ship them over to him, and he plays them. He got lots of people to come in. It's wonderful. He said, you know what my brother does for me? And I said, no, I have no idea. What's your brother do for you? He said, once a year, he sends me back to China. 3 weeks. He said he pays my airfare, he pays my food, he pays all my expenses, everything while I'm over there, just as kind of a thank you. He said, but you know what I do when I'm over in China? I said, No, I have no idea. What do you do when you're in China? He said, I buy this and this and this. I ship it all back to the U.S. and I resell it. I make lots of money. I said, oh, really? About this time, we're getting ready to pull into the airport. He said, oh, one more thing. He said, what's that? He said, I'm also the Chinese interpreter for the city of Denver. I said, you are? He said, yeah. He said, they pay me big bucks when a Chinese delegation comes in. So I'm over here going, blah, blah, blah. They don't have any idea what I'm saying, but they're paying me big bucks. So if I'd been in America my whole life, he said, I'd be a millionaire today. You know what? I believe him. He'd only been here about 10 or 12 years. But see, when he came to America, he came to America with a different set of eyes. He came to America and looked around and said, you know what? There's a huge opportunity in this country. If you're willing to spend a little time, a little money, invest some of your energies in this, you can make a really nice living in this country. He looked around with different eyes. Most people grow up in America today, what's their mentality? Hey, what can the government do for me? What's the least amount of money I can do, work I can do to earn enough money to do what I want to do? Okay? But he came with a different set of eyes. So what I want to do as part of an introduction, I want to tell that story because as we go through 15 things that all successful companies have in common today, you're not going to see any brand new things that, wow, I never thought of that before. Okay? Most of the things we're going to talk about, you know about already. My objective is for some of us who are sitting up on here on the fence saying, gee, I need to do this, kind of push us over to the other side and help us actually get going so we do some of the things we know we ought to be doing anyway. So we're going to review the 15 things that all successful companies have in common. And we're going to start out by talking about what I define as a successful company. Successful company to me is a company that covers all their real cost of doing business from a cash flow perspective, dollars in, dollars out, real dollars. In addition to that, paying the owner a regular and reasonable salary while providing retirement plan both for the owner and the employees. In addition to that, covering all our costs, taking care of the employees, getting a regular salary, we meet and hopefully exceed our customers' expectations. Then on top of that, we generate an additional 3 to 7% net profit on top of all that. Now, some of you look at that 3 to 7% and say, you know what, Tom, if I couldn't make more than 3 to 7%, I'd close my doors and go do something else. You know what? I agree with you 100%. But if I could get the industry up to 3 to 7%, you know what? We'd have a totally different industry than we have today. We really would. So that's what I define as a successful company to get us started. Now, as we go through these different areas, we're going to do two things. As we go through each one of the different areas, there's a point value with each one. It says if I do this, you get this many points. If I do this, this many points. Normally we have a handout that looks like this. It's part of what your download was. The reality is I suspect nobody in here physically downloaded has a copy of that. So what I'm going to do is still go through the program like this, but I want to suggest when you get back home, look at the different point values, give yourself some points for each thing that you do, and see what you come up with, because we're going to talk about what people look like nationally when it's all said and done. Okay? So, first thing that all successful companies have in common is this. They know how much they have to charge per hour in every department of their company to cover their cost of doing business and make a reasonable profit. Okay? And that's from a cash flow perspective. Huge differences in cash flow and accounting. Most of you have already experienced it. We just went through most of April. Most of you have filed your taxes at this point. Chances are a lot of us went in to see our CPA, and they had a big smile on their face. They said, congratulations, Bill or Sam or Sally. You had a wonderful year. You made X numbers of thousands of dollars last year. And you look at your checkbook and you say, where is it? I mean, according to my accountant, my CPA, I made all this money that I got to pay taxes on, and there's nothing in my checkbook, or at least not what he says should be there. You just found out the difference in cash flow and accounting. Cash flow deals with the real dollars that flow in and the real dollars that flow out of your company, where accounting tends to work with paper dollars. When it comes to setting your hourly rates, it needs to be based on cash flow dollars, dollars in, dollars out. Okay? Now, I'm going to take you through a full-day seminar on labor pricing in about 2.5 minutes here. So just kind of grip your seat real quick. But these are the basics. Number one, what are your real costs of doing business? And we're all pretty familiar with our overhead costs, rent, utilities, insurances, things like that. In addition to that, when we're out there installing the signs and doing things like that, we got this thing called non-billable time. That's shop time in the morning, shop time between jobs. That's shop time, that's vacations, holidays, sick pay. Typically, cost of non-billable time is your highest cost of doing business in your entire company. That's the time you pay for the tech for that you can't charge the customer for. In addition to that, from a cash flow perspective, we need to put in the full amount of the loan payment. If you got a $500 loan payment, 100 of its interest and 400 of its principal, anybody know what shows up in your P&L statement? Just the $100 interest. But you wrote out a check for $500 that flowed out of your company. Okay? That needs to be included in your pricing if you want the customer to pay for it. If you got a lot of loan payments, that's why when you sat down with your CPA at the end of the year, he may have told you you made a lot of money and there's no money there. Why not? Because we got all that principal that didn't show up. Okay? Big difference in cash flow and accounting. And the other one down here, difference in cash flow and accounting is equipment replacement cost versus depreciation. Depreciation deals with what you paid for a piece of equipment 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Equipment replacement cost deals with what it's going to cost you 3, 4, 5 years in the future to replace it and builds that future cost in today's pricing so that when you're ready to replace that piece of equipment, you got the dollars available to do it. So step number one, what's it cost you to do business from a cash flow perspective? Number two, how much gross profit do we make on the sale of our materials, our parts, our signs itself? Okay? All of us mark those things up. Then we calculate our billable hours. These are the hours we can actually charge the customer, not the hours we pay the tech for, but how many hours we can actually charge the customer. Okay? And then we come up with our break-even rate. We take our total cost of doing business, subtract the markup that we get selling the parts, materials, signs, etc., divided by our billable hours. We come up with our break-even rate, $97.50 an hour. That's just covering my cost of doing business. So I got to put profit in there. Now, how do I put profit in? I use a divisor. Okay? So if I want a 15% net profit, I take my break-even rate divided by 0.85. That means I got to charge roughly $115 an hour per technician per man in order to cover all my cost of doing business and make a reasonable profit. If I wanted a 10% profit, I'd divide it by 0.9. Okay? Now you just went through a full day seminar in about 2.5 minutes. Okay? But that's the basics of setting your hourly rates when you're out there doing repair work or installing signs of that nature. Okay? So again, there's points for each one of these. If you have no idea what your rate needs to be, you're just kind of using what everybody else does, give yourself a goose egg. If you've recalculated within the last 3, 2, or 1 year, or within the last year, when you get back home, write some points down, see where you stand at the end of the session. Okay? Second thing that all successful companies have in common is this. They create a month-by-month, department-by-department cash flow budget, and they track the results monthly. Okay? Now, why do we want to develop a month-by-month cash flow budget? Several different reasons. Number one, it forces you to look at your company in detail, perhaps for the very first time. Now, some of you got 2, 3, 4 different departments within your company. You get a report on your desk every Monday morning. You know what made money, what didn't make money last week. You know exactly what's going on. Others of us in here don't know what it costs us to open our doors every day. Well, you put a budget together for your company, guess what? It's going to force you to understand what it costs you to do business. Secondly, we want to put a budget together because it provides accountability. I want to urge you, as you get older, larger and larger, get your managers involved in the budgeting process. Why? They tend to become accountable for the numbers that they give you. So get them involved in the process. Another reason we want to put a budget together helps you begin to plan the growth of your company. Okay? Most of us in our industry evolve. That is, we start doing something else and somebody says, hey, can you do this? And we say yes, and we start doing that, and we evolve into a new area without really thinking about it or planning where we're going to go. So putting a budget together helps you plan that process. And number 4, it provides information upon which to make good economic decisions. Let's say I got 3 vehicles on the road. I'm tracking the cost of maintenance for each one of them. 2 of the 3 vehicles, we're spending $700, $800 a year on maintenance. And the 3rd vehicle, we're spending $3,000 or $4,000 a year on maintenance. Well, I don't have to be a brain scientist to look at those numbers and know which vehicle I got to get rid of. But I got to track the cost in order to understand what's going on. Okay? And last one is my basis for tracking profitability within the company. My budget tells me how much money I should be making each month and during the year, tracking that each month tells me whether I'm actually hitting my target or not. Okay? That's why I want to put a budget together, and all successful companies do that. And again, there's points for each one of them. I'm not going to go through these descriptions for you because you're not going to be writing them down like most sessions we do. But they're in there, so go ahead and check them when you get back home. The third thing that all successful companies have in common is this. They have created a business plan for their company. I don't care if you're a two-man operation or you've got 100 people working for you. You need to put a business plan together. Why? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, but you'll never know when you arrived. Okay? Nothing worse than getting to the end of the year and finding out I made a $50,000 profit. What's wrong with that? Well, maybe I should have only made $25,000 and I doubled my profit. Wonderful. What if I should have made $100,000 and only hit 50 for the year? I had a horrible year. If I don't put a business plan together and know where I want to go and how I'm going to get there, I don't know whether I arrived or not because I don't have any reason to go. I'm just waking up every morning and doing the same thing over and over and over again. Okay? So putting a business plan together is going to do several things for you. It's going to set the direction of your company, where you're going, how you're going to get there. It's going to spell out how you're going to get there, and it's going to detail the cost of meeting your goals. What labor do I need? What equipment do I need? What cash flow needs are going to be? What required funding am I going to have? And putting that business plan together is an excellent tool to share with your banker in terms of helping him understand you and your business so that if and when you need to borrow money, he understands where you're coming from in that process. Okay? Now, I want to go through just real briefly an outline of a business plan. There's several different ones. This is just one of them. Usually starts out with what we call an executive summary. That's a history of the company, general market conditions, status of competition, company goals. In other words, why are we in business? You need to give some serious thought why you're in business. I know all of us started out in business for one reason and one reason only. That is to make provision for our families. But after you've been in business 5, 10, 15 years, you need to kind of sit back and say, now why am I in business at this point? Just to make more money? What's the purpose of my business? Now, our company has been in business 32 years. About 20 years ago, I sat down and I asked myself that question. You know what we came up with for our company? I've got a daughter who's in full-time missions in Cape Town, South Africa with her family. I said, the vision of our company is going to be, we want to generate enough profit to support missionaries who have a true call to go to the field but don't have the money to support themselves. That's why we're in business. Not just to make money, but to do something for somebody else. Why are you in business? It's important to know that. Financial business plan, history of your company from a financial standpoint, current financial statements, capital expenditure forecast, what equipment you're going to need and when you're going to need it. Back to our month-by-month cash flow budgets for the next couple of years and often for the next 4 or 5 years. Then you get into your marketing program. How are you going to market your company? Radio, TV, Yellow Pages, social media. How are you going to do it? Want to show the cost of each one and the expected results. You just don't decide to spend another $20,000 on marketing next year. You need to know what kind of results you expect from that. How many more leads? How many more jobs? How many more sales do I expect? Okay. Need expectations when you're spending money on marketing. What's going to be done and who's going to do it? What's the cost of that plan? And is that cost built into my budget? And again, our production needs, how many labor people we're going to have in the field, in the office, what are my material forecasts in terms of inventory, my assets in terms of equipment, and lastly, an organizational plan. I want to strongly suggest you put together an organizational plan for your company, not just where you are right now, but where you expect to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Because 3 years from now, this position is going to open up over here. If we keep growing, 5 years from now, I'm going to need this one and this one and this one. And after I put those organizational charts together for the next 2 or 3 years, that's when I want you to sit down and share that with all your employees. Because one of the reasons people go down the street for 50 cents an hour more is because they don't see a career path where they are right now. But if you can show them, hey, with the next year or two, we're going to have this position open, this one open over here. By the way, is anybody interested in those positions? I am. Okay, let's start the training process today. Take some outside courses. We'll do some internal training so when that job opens up, guess what? You're ready to fill it. Now you've created a reason to stay with your company. Okay. So again, from a business plan standpoint, We've got points for each one, whether you have a business plan for the next 2 years, next 5 years, etc. Whether you have shared it with your banker, you get an extra 50 bonus points. Again, fill those in when you get back home. Fourth thing all successful companies have in common. They have a marketing plan in place, not for the next 6 months or so, but for the next 12 to 18 months. Okay? That's why that same irritating commercial comes on TV over and over and over again. People have to see something, they have to hear it at least 9 to 10 times before they buy something. Over and over and over again. So when it comes to my marketing program, what are you going to be doing? Social media, direct mail, TV, newsletters. How are you going to market your company? When are you going to do it? That's almost as important as what you do. And an estimate of the cost. And you're going to notice a thread through all 15 things we talk about today. And that thread is this: dollars. Most everything you do is going to cost you some money. When you put that money into your budget, what comes out of the budget? What I need to charge a customer. I got to cover all your costs of doing business before you make a dime. That's got to be in your budget, and that's where your pricing comes from in the middle of it all. Okay? A couple suggestions. If you're not doing it already, track where your leads are coming from. Okay? Begin to ask your customers, whether they walk through the front door or on the telephone, why did you call our company? Why? We want to find out what's working. Okay? Is it a current customer? Is it a referral from another customer? Did they see your billboard? Was it social media? You want to find out what's working. Okay? But you know what's going to happen when your marketing program really takes off? You're going to ask the customer, hey, why did you call our company? And initially, they're going to say something like, I saw your billboard. That's why I called your company. Thank you very much. Hang up the phone. Talk to the person next to you and say, you know what, we haven't had a billboard for 5 years. And you really, really, really know your marketing program is working. You know what's going to happen? You're going to ask the customer, why did you call our company? You know what their answer is going to be? I don't know. I just know when I needed product, when I needed service, when I needed what you offer, you're who I thought of. That's what marketing's all about. Difference in marketing and advertising. Marketing is keeping your name in front of the customer on a regular basis. Advertising is a call to action. There's a difference between the two. Okay? That marketing program needs to be continuous and overlapping. That means I got to plan what I'm going to do for the next 6 to 12 months, because when one thing tapers off, the next thing kicks in. One tapers off, next thing kicks in. That means I got to be planning what's going to happen, because if I'm going to send out a newsletter right here, it's got to be at the printer here or social media person, and before that it's got to be developed. That's a process, and that's going to take several months. If I want it to go out here, I got to back it up and say, hey, when do I start? So when that thing goes out, I start the process for the next thing. Okay? Unless you're a very large company and you can get somebody on the outside to do your marketing for you, get somebody on the outside to do your marketing if you're not a very large company. Why? It gets done. A lot of us know what we need to be doing from a marketing standpoint, but we don't take the time to do it. The reason you get somebody on the outside to do it is because it gets done. Okay? If it's important, it's going to raise sales for you, then find somebody on the outside to do it for you. Okay? So when it comes to marketing, again, if you don't have any plan whatsoever, 0 points. If you do have an informal plan, maybe it's not written, you'd give yourself 50. And if it is written and part of your budget, give yourself 100 points. The fifth thing that all successful companies have in common is some basic marketing tools in place. One of those basic marketing tools is what I call a brag book. That's what you sit down with every brand new potential customer, and that's what you tell them about your company with. Okay? That can be on a laptop, that can be on your computer, that can be a brochure, it can be a physical book, but it lists different things. What we're trying to do is build credibility with the customer. Okay? It has a referral list of past customers and their comments. Copies of your insurance certificates. Why do I want a copy of my insurance certificate in there? Because I want the customer to know I'm insured. Okay? And it has Joe come up and say, hey, I'll do this for you, and he puts the price on the back of a business card. I might have the customer actually ask me, hey, by the way, are you insured? What happens if somebody gets hurt when they're putting up that sign for me? What's going to happen? So I want copies of my insurance certificates. I want copies of past jobs. I want, pictures of past jobs, pictures of my building, pictures of my people. Now, if I've got ugly-looking buildings and ugly-looking people, don't take them in there. okay? Take a picture of a nice-looking person. No, but seriously, pictures make all the difference in the world. You're the industry when it comes to people visually looking at things, okay? A list of associations, organizations you're part of, a list of your licenses, and of course some product literature. What are we doing? We're building credibility with the customer. Building credibility with the customer. I worked for one of the best salespeople in the world long before I started my company. He told me, Tom, said, when you sit down with a brand new customer, you need to do 3 things, and you need to do them in this order. Number 1, sell yourself. Talk about how long you've been in business, your education, your background, etc. Spend 2 or 3 minutes doing that, then sell the company. That's what this is for. Okay? When you do a good job of selling yourself, you do a good job of selling your company, you know what? The product or the service will sell itself because people buy on relationships. Okay? Send out create a company brochure. Why? Because a company brochure typically tells you, your customer, all the different things that you do. You'd be absolutely amazed how many of your customers know you do this and don't know you do this over here. So creating a very simple company brochure and handing those out to customers makes them aware of the different things that you do. We should have an annual letter to our customer at least once a year. Newsletters, which we'll talk about briefly here in a little bit. From my standpoint, a good 75 to 80% of your total budget should go to your current customer base, because those are the people who are going to use you again, and those are the people who are going to refer you to other people at the same time. Okay? So again, there's points for each one of those things. Again, you can review those as you get time back at the office. And by the way, there should be a handout that you can download on this. If you want the full set of slides, big enough to read them, give me a card at the end of the session. It says slides on it. I'd be glad to send you a full copy of them. Okay. Number 6, all successful companies I know have 3 separate physical corporations. Okay. 3 physically different corporations. Corporation number 1 has your employees in it. Corporation number 2 has you and your family in it. Corporation number 2 is a legal corporation. Why do I want to set up a separate one? Because, this is interesting, if you give a benefit to somebody within your organization, nothing wrong with that, but you have to offer it to everybody in the company, right? Setting up a separate corporation with you and your family, and it lets you do a couple of really neat things. It's a separate legal corporation, has you and your family in it. Okay? That corporation can have any kind of benefit program it wants. They might want to pay all of their employees health benefits. They may want to pay all of their employees education benefits. What did my children's college education just become? Tax deductible. How does it work? It's pretty simple, actually. Corporation number 2 is a consulting company. They're hired by corporation number 1 to run their company. Once a month, corporation number 2 invoices them $10,000 for consulting fees, goes into corporation number 2. Now it's got to be a legal corporation, file taxes, all that sort of thing. Okay? But that allows you to use some benefits that you might not have otherwise. And then the third corporation down here is more from a liability standpoint. This third corporation down here owns all of my vehicles. All of my vehicles. Why? From a liability standpoint. So that if I get in an accident and somebody sues me, they got the liability for corporation number 3, but they can't touch me personally, and they can't touch the rest of my company. Every successful company I know has 3 different corporations in it. Again, there's points for each one of them. You can look at those here in just a little bit. Okay? 7th thing that all successful companies have in common: networking. And networking is a relatively new term over the past years, but it's a very, very powerful concept. Very powerful concept. Do you know why they call us independent contractors as an industry? You ever thought about that? Why they call us independent contractors? Because we're independent. What's that mean? Gee, I got this problem. I sure don't want to ask Bill or Sally or Sam about it because I'm the only one in the world that's ever had this problem before. And you know what? Every single thing you ever have gone through, are going through, or going to go through has been experienced by every single person in this room. There's nothing unique about your particular situation. When I talk to contractors in all the different trades across this country, joining a mixed group is one of the best things most of them tell me they've ever done in their lives. What do I mean by that? That's usually 3, 4, 5 different companies who do similar type work but live in non-competing territories, generally different places throughout the nation. And they'll start out meeting once or twice a year, usually twice a year. And they'll usually go to one of the members' places. They'll be there for 2 days. The first day they scatter. One individual may interview the employees, another one looks at their pricing process, somebody else might look at their marketing plan, etc. And then that night they come together and they roast the owner. And if you got thick skin, you can learn a lot through that presentation. Okay? Next day they pick a topic. It might be marketing or whatever. Everybody brings materials and they discuss it. What starts out as meeting once or twice or maybe 3 times a year evolves into relationships. And then what happens? Now we're friends. Now we're going on vacation together. And you know what? I got this situation right there. I'll call Paul and find out if he's ever run into that. Paul, you ever run into this situation? I'm going through it right now. I said, no, I haven't. But William has. Give him a call. And now you got a network of people who do similar type work that you can call on a regular basis. I strongly, strongly recommend that you become part of a mixed group if you're not part of one already. And then once you master that process, then think about a small mixed group with other trades. Other people in your community. Usually pick one other company first. Could be any trade you want out there. Okay? And why do I want to do that? You can recommend each other. Share leads. Okay? You've spent many years working for the Dial One franchise network, which is a national franchise of the service and trades industry. And they'd come into a place like Atlanta, they'd get one HVAC, one sign company, one pool company, one of these, one of those, all 40 trades together. And if one contractor went to the home and they're doing some work there, and they noticed that they needed some work done over here in a different area, they'd recommend somebody else. They always were working for each other in that middle of that process. You can hand out each other's literature, do direct mail together, share a booth cost at something like we're doing here. Okay. Bottom line is pretty straightforward. The customer likes and trusts you. They like and trust your recommendations as well. People hate Yellow Pages roulette, or what they used to call that. They'd rather get a recommendation from somebody they trust. Okay. So again, if you occasionally meet with other contractors, give yourself 10 points. If you meet with other contractors on a regular basis, 20. And if you meet with other contractors and other trades, give yourself 40 points. And the 7th thing that all successful companies have in common is this. They plan their growth. There's a misunderstood term in the world of small business, and that misunderstood term is growth. And it's misunderstood from this standpoint. Mentally, we have this direct relationship between growth and profitability, meaning if we do a little more work, we'll make a little more money. If we do a lot more work, we'll make a lot more money. If we double sales, we can double profits. Okay? Now, that can happen, but it usually doesn't. There's 3 points of growth, 3 points of physical growth in your company that have the potential to put you out of business. Now, I want to share those briefly with you this morning, or this afternoon. First one was when the owner moves from the field in the office. We started out small by ourselves. We're doing some things. We're working out in the field. Now we got to move into the office and start running this thing. Well, gee, I didn't sign up for that. I mean, I started out because I like being in the field. I like talking to people. I like conversations. I like moving around all day long. But now the company's grown to the point somebody's got to run this thing. I guess that's me. How do I learn the business side of the business? Didn't teach in high school. Didn't teach in a trade school of any kind. And you can get a PhD from Harvard in business, and it won't teach you how to run a small company. Might help you run a corporation, but it won't help you run a small company. So how do we learn the business side of the business? Well, it's called the road of hard knocks. There's a few places you can go and go through courses and whatnot, and we have a few ourselves. But in general, there's not a lot of places you can go. So it's the road of hard knocks. We do some things right, we do some things wrong, we learn from it, and hopefully learn before we go out of business in that process. But it's not an easy situation. But mentally, I'm going from a technician mentality, so to speak, working out in the field, into the office. Also, when I move from the field in the office, what else is happening from an economic standpoint? Well, gee, when I was out there working in the field doing all these different things, I was productive labor. I was making money for the company. Now I moved into the office. What did I just become? Overhead. Typically, when the owner moves from the field in the office, he's got 3 to 5 people out there in the field working for him. Okay? When they move into the office, the average company needs to raise their rates somewhere between $8 and $12 an hour just to make the same profit they made before. Let me ask you a question. If all your friends, neighbors, relatives in your trade or any other trade out there today move from the field into the office, what percentage of them raise their rates $8 to $12 an hour? The answer is real close to zip. What happens, we start that 1 to 4 year process of going out of business, go out of business before we even find out what's going on. It's too late. It's too late. So first point of growth that can put you out of business is when the owner moves from the field into the office. Second point of growth is when gross sales get around $1 million a year. $1 million a year. That is the worst, hardest, toughest place to be in the entire life of your company. Entire life of your company. Because when you get sales around $1 million a year, somewhere between $750,000 and $1.2 million, several things are happening, and they're all happening at the same time. Let's start out with the owner. Gee, he's been in the office for 2 or 3 years maybe. We're approaching that $1 million in sales for the first time. What's happening to me as the owner? There's not enough of me. I mean, I'm working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, right? I can't do anymore. We're getting any bigger. I need some help. That might be an office manager, field supervisor, whatever it might be. I got to spread the load a little bit. When I do that, what happens? Overhead went up. Okay. Gee, when I get around $1 million in gross sales too, what else is happening? QuickBooks doesn't work so good anymore. Now, it's a great program. 85% of contractors in this country use it, including myself. Okay. But when you get around $1 million in sales, that's when you need some additional information that QuickBooks can give you, like complete customer history, not just their name and address. Okay? I need an inventory program because now I got bunches of stuff to keep track of. Okay? I used to just do 1 or 2 things. Now I'm doing half a dozen different things. I need to departmentalize my company. Okay? So what's happening when I get around that $1 million in gross sales, that's when I start thinking about, at least, putting in a fully integrated computer system. Well, that's going to cost me anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 plus at least a part-time, if not a full-time person to run it. There goes my overhead again. Okay. And receivables. Gee, when I was small, $10,000, $25,000, $30,000 out in receivables was huge. Had the potential to put me out of business. Man, when I hit $1 million or more, I'll have so much money coming in, receivables won't be a problem anymore. Is that true? No. Now it's $150,000 out there. Okay? So what I found out, and I don't have any national statistics to support this, but I got 32 years of working with contractors across this nation and Canada. You know what I found out? About 70% of the people who had $1 million in gross sales for the first time lost money. You talk about frustration. We just spent our whole working career trying to hit $1 million in gross sales. We finally hit it. We didn't make any money. That's frustrating. Now, many of you in this room have already surpassed $1 million. And yeah, it was tough, Tom, but I got through it. Well, you know what? It repeats itself. Repeats itself at 2.5, repeats itself at 5 million, repeats itself at 10 million. Okay? Those are all points of growth where you're being forced to make some significant investments in your company to prepare you to move to the next level, but you don't quite have the sales to support it yet. So again, profitability shrinks until we hit that plateau, and then it goes back up again if we live through that process. Okay? So first point of growth that can put you out of business when the owner moves from the field in the office. Second one, when you get around $1 million in gross sales, 2.5, 5, or 10 million. And the third one can hit you the first year, the second year, the 5th year, the 55th year. It can hit you every single year. That's any point of rapid growth. Any point of rapid growth. Now, I define rapid growth as anything over roughly 15% a year. Now, that doesn't mean you can't grow more than 15% a year, but you better be putting a budget together and you better be adjusting your pricing along the way to maintain profitability in the middle of that process. Okay? So again, these are just kind of some warning signals to be aware of, because all successful companies plan their growth, they don't just evolve. Okay? Again, if you don't have a plan, it's a goose egg. If you do have a plan, you get 50 points. Number 9, every successful company I know has an organized continuing education program. They have weekly technical training for their technicians. They have monthly in-house training for their customers on customer service and safety and things like that. The owner or supervisor attends business training seminars at least on a quarterly basis, or conventions like you're going through right now. Subscribe to podcasts, video training, etc., and trade magazines. In other words, we keep ourselves abreast of what's going on within the industry, because it's changing, and it's changing fast, really fast. Okay? So again, there's points if you do different things there. We can talk about those here again when you go through the process. 10th thing, a newsletter. Every successful company I know puts out a newsletter, and that might be a physical newsletter, that might be electronic newsletter, it might be both, okay? Because there's two groups of people out there. There's a group of people like my wife who won't touch a computer. I mean, she literally won't touch a computer, okay? And then we've got the younger people coming up who won't do anything except on a telephone or an iPad or computer, okay? Totally electronic. So you got to be able to hit both of those in the middle of it. But in newsletter is an important thing to have. It keeps your name in front of the customer. It's not to sell them, it's just part of your marketing process to keep your name in front of the customer. So inform your customer of new products and services when they come available. Make them feel like they're part of the company. Okay? Lots of different examples of different types of newsletters, which I don't have time to get through this morning. Okay? But a newsletter is a very, very important thing. Again, it keeps your name in front of the customer. Again, that's what marketing's all about. So when they need your product, when they need your service, that's who they think of. Okay. 11th thing that all successful companies have in common. They have developed an internal collections policy, and they actually use it. Okay? It's a difference in creating something and actually using it. Big difference between the two. Okay? This is a very simple collections policy, but it works pretty well. Number one, it needs to be a written policy. Number two, there needs to be a stated time for invoicing to take place the same day the job is completed, if at all possible, or at least within 24 hours. Do not wait to the end of the month. Don't wait to the end of the week. Do it within 24 hours after that job has been completed. Okay? It's called buyer's remorse. The longer you wait to get that invoice out, the more the customer is going to resist to paying it. Send it out at least within 24 hours, if not the same day. When payment is past due, send out a second notice immediately, not giving them another 30 days, but giving them 10 days. Why? They've already gotten the original invoice. Why would I give them another 30 days? Okay. Requesting payment within 10 days. Now, if payment's not made within the next 10 days, forget the paperwork. That's when it's time for a phone call. Okay. Now, make the initial call with somebody in the office, not the owner, not the manager, somebody in the office. Okay. Why? Because when you make a physical phone call to that customer and say, where's my money? About 70% of the time, they're going to go ahead and pay it. Now, you get every excuse in the book why they haven't, but the bottom line is about 70% of the people will pay it when they get a physical phone call from you. Okay? Now, when you make that first phone call, whoever that person is in your office, document everything. Okay? The day you called, the person you talked to, the time of day, and before you get off the phone, get a confirmation from them, hey, when will you be sending us a check? It'll be a week from Wednesday, will it be next Thursday? Sometimes they'll say, well, I was going to write you one today. Great, we'll drive by and we'll pick it up. Okay? But get a commitment from them. Why? Because if you ever wind up in small claims court, if you haven't, you probably will be someday, it's the person who has all the documentation that wins the case. So document everything. Now, if you still haven't gotten paid, then it's time for a second phone call. That's when you get the owner or the manager involved. There's something magical about the owner or the manager calling the customer and saying, hey, where's my money? Now, at this point, you've sent out the notices. They've gotten a call from somebody else in the office. You're the last straw. Okay? You have power that nobody else has. But I don't want you involved in the initial part of it, because about 70% of the people will pay at that point. If they still haven't paid, that's when you call them yourself. Say, where's my money? If that doesn't work, then we're looking at an attorney or a collections agency, neither of which is a really great option. Now, sometimes you can go through everything up there and do it properly, and you still don't get paid. Now, we don't have much of a collections policy anymore in our company, but about 10 years ago we did. And I had about probably 10 or 12 customers, individuals / organizations who hadn't paid me yet. We went through the whole process. We still hadn't been paid. Okay? So I was sitting at home one day and I was having my prayer time, and I was reading the story in the Bible about the lady who went to the unjust judge. And if you remember that story, the lady's husband died. She went to the judge and she asked for legal protection. The judge said, no, you can't have it. Women didn't have any rights in Israel. She was a female. Sorry, no. Well, Scripture records she came back the next day and she asked again. And she came back the next day and she asked again. And she came back the next day and she asked again, day after day. And pretty soon, you know what? Judge turned to her and said, I'm going to grant your request. Not because I fear your God, and not because it's the right thing to do. It's just, you're bugging me to death. Paraphrased a bit, but that's what it was. Okay? But that's what it's all about. Okay? If you want to get paid, you got to call the customer. Okay? So what I did, I had those 10 or 12 people who hadn't paid me yet. I went down to the office that morning. The Lord gave me an idea. Everybody's got a 6 or 8 foot table somewhere. I set one up next to the copy machine. Took those 12 people who hadn't paid me yet, took the first invoice, looked at it, made 25 copies, customer number 1. Took the second one, customer number 2, 25 copies, customer number 3, 25 copies, sent them 25 copies of all 12 people's. Okay? Got them all done, got me a big red magic marker. Picked up the first one, 128 days late. Big red magic marker across the center of that thing diagonally. You owe me $1,237, 128 days late, please pay immediately. Did that with everybody on the table. Next day came in, picked up the next one, 129 days late, sent them another one. Next day, 130 days late, please pay, send one every single day. Okay? You know what happened? Within 2 weeks, I got all but 3 of those checks in. Okay? Now, if you're those last 3 people, and you're getting one of those from me every single day, where does it go pretty soon? Circular file. Don't even open it. Here's another one from Tom. Boop, in the trash can it goes. You ever hear of peer pressure? Works really good. Then those last 3 people, you know what I did? On the outside back of the envelope, big red magic marker. You owe me $1,237. It's 168 days late. Please pay immediately. Who sees the back of that envelope? Everybody. Now the mailman, the clerk, the whole world knows I hadn't paid my bill. You know, I got all 3 of those checks within a week. That was a nasty note with every single one of them, but there was a check attached. People say, well, they'll never work with you again. No problem. I don't want to work with them either. Okay? Okay? Persistence is what pays off when it comes to collections. Makes a big difference. Why? Shrinking value of your money. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, based on the time value of money, that is, if I could take that money and put it somewhere else where it's earning money, after 30 days, my dollar's only worth 97 cents. After 60 days, my dollar's only worth 90 cents. So if I don't get my money in within the first 30 or 60 days, I've lost my profit. Now I'm getting into the cost of the job itself. Got to get that money back in as soon as possible. Okay? 12th thing that all successful companies have in common. They have some kind of a customer response card program. And you might present it to the customer if you're out there installing a sign. You might be mailing it. Lots of different forms that can take. This is just a very simple little card. Little 4x6 card we've been using with contractors for 25 years. 3 sections. How did we do? Timely manner of service, overall quality of work, courtesy of office personnel. They just checked excellent, good, fair, poor. Okay? Center section down here, general comments, problems, or praise. We want to hear about it. And the last section down here, referrals. Please list the name, phone numbers of friends, neighbors, relatives, or other businesses who might want similar type work done. You'd be surprised, amazed what people write on that little card they won't tell you about. You can finish the job, just installed that sign, how'd everything go? Everything was lovely, no problem. You can call them 3 days later, what we call a happy call. How'd things go? Everything was good, okay? And that little card comes back in. The little card comes back in and says things like, gee, when they came over to install my sign, they dripped oil all over my driveway or the parking lot in front of the building. Okay? Or maybe they're out there working on it, stepped on the rose bush and broke it. Okay? Those aren't huge things. They're going to keep that customer forever working with you again. What it is, it's that little burr under the saddle, that little point of irritation. But if you can take that negative situation and do something about it in a positive way, you will literally create a customer cheerleader for your company. You'll be absolutely amazed how many people write the name of a friend, neighbor, relative, or other business who might want similar type work done. Just ask. You want referrals. Why? Because outside of your current customer base, a referral is the highest close rate there is out there, 68%. Referrals are gold. Okay? So, some type of a customer response program, again, hand it to the customer, mail it to them with a bill, whatever. Okay. Number 13, a line of credit. Every successful company I know of has a line of credit set up. Okay? Now, a line of credit is absolutely critical. Okay? But a line of credit has one purpose and one purpose only, and that's short-term borrowing against receivables. In other words, I got a $25,000 check that was supposed to come in today. I just found out it's not going to come in for 60 days. That's when I go to my line of credit. I borrow the $30,000. I pay my employees, take care of all my bills. But when that $30,000 check comes in, I pay my line of credit back to zero. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, the problem with line of credit is once it's set up, it's easy to use. It's too easy to use. I mean, you can literally write a check on it anytime you want for whatever you want up to the limits of that thing. So, gee, I need another $10,000 worth of inventory or a piece of equipment. Okay? No problem. I'll just write a check for it. Maybe I need to buy another vehicle. I could go down to the dealership and or the bank, fill out the paperwork, get a loan, probably without too much problem, but I'm out there negotiating for it. What's my last negotiating straw? Hey, what if I wrote you a check today? Where'd it come from? My line of credit. So rather than getting back to zero, now we're $15,000, $25,000, $75,000. A lot of people tell me, well, Tom, what's the big deal? I mean, mine hadn't been below $75,000 in 5 years, but hey, I know the banker knows me, we're buddies, we play golf on weekends, he sends me an invoice for the interest, I pay it. What's the big deal? Okay? The big deal is this. I don't know about you, but my little bank in Owensboro, Kentucky, where I live, okay, it's been bought out 3 times in the last 5 years. And every time a brand new bank comes in and purchases an existing bank, you know the first group of customers they look at? Everybody with a line of credit. They come to Contractor A, and Contractor A, lots and lots of activity because a perfect customer from the bank standpoint, lots and lots of activity, but they get down to zero once or twice a year. So they start reviewing everybody with a line of credit. First contractor, lots of activity, went down to zero twice last year, perfect customer. Then we got Contractor B, lots and lots of activity, didn't quite down to zero, but close, good customer. Then we get to our friend, whoops, haven't been below $75,000 in 5 years. Not a small red flag, a big red flag goes up. Then you're going to get a phone call, one of 2 calls, one if they want to keep you, one if they don't. If they want to keep you, the phone call goes like this. Hello, Mr. Jones, yes, you know that $75,000 you owe us a line of credit? Sure do. We just turned that into a 12-month note. Your payments are so much per month. They start the 15th of next month. Thank you very much. Click. That's if they like you. If they don't, does anybody know what it says on the back of that line of credit? It's on every single one of them. Maybe big letters, maybe little, but it's on every single one of them. It says due upon demand, 100% upon demand. Well, Mr. Jones, you know that $75,000 you own line of credit? Sure do. We'd like that paid in full the 15th of next month. Thank you. Click. Don't think that can't happen. It can, it will, and it does, especially in today's environment. Line of credit is a critical thing, but it needs to be used for its intended purposes, which is short-term borrowing against receivables. Now, some of you may be in the reverse situation. That is, you have a line of credit you had for 2 or 3 years, cash flow has been good, you haven't had to borrow anything on it. Okay? If you're in that situation, first thing you do Monday morning when you get back home, borrow $25,000 or $30,000 on it, put that money in a separate bank, pay it back over 30, 60, 90 days. In other words, show some activity on that line of credit. Because if you don't have any activity on it, you're of zero value to the bank, and one day they're going to cancel it just like that. What happens? Murphy's Law kicks in, and the next day you need it. Okay? So show some activity on your line of credit. Okay? So again, if you don't have a line of credit at zero, if you do, give yourself 20 points. 14th thing, I'm going to go over this really quickly. Bottom line here is, don't lose a customer over a $25, $50, $85 service call. Think about the lifetime cash flow from that individual, that company, or that business you're working with. Don't get ticked off and angry at them and lose that cash flow. Okay? I've got a wife and 3 daughters. Guess what their hobby is? Shopping. And they're good at it. I mean, they invest large amounts of time, energy, and money there. And every once in a while, my wife will come home and she said, I tried to take this garment back to the department store. They fussed and argued with me, wouldn't give it to me, wouldn't like to take it back. And her last comment is, I told myself I'd never go into that store again. Well, if that store manager had any idea the cash flow he just cut off, he'd have taken the garment back, invited her out to lunch, and given her a $50 gift certificate. Okay? Don't cut your nose off to spite your face. That doesn't mean you never fire a customer, but think about it before you do. Think about it before you do. The last thing up here, excuse me, right here. Happy calls, we talked about that. 100% guaranteed, no fussing policy. Send a card out to your customer base. Gift after major installation. I could spend 30 minutes on that one right there. Okay? Once you've got a customer who spent significant thousands of dollars with you, okay, say thank you. Give them a gift certificate to a local restaurant, maybe a gift basket, something that says, hey, we appreciate your business. You know, allocate $25, $50, put it into the price of the sign, but tell them thank you. Okay? People appreciate that. Okay? And keep in mind that 80% of the people who leave you and every other business, didn't leave because of the product, didn't leave because of the service, didn't leave because of the price. They left because the attitude of one or more employees they talked to. Had nothing to do with the product, nothing to do with the service. Attitude is critical. Okay? So again, if you have some kind of a happy calls, etc., you can give yourself points on those. Last thing, I call it a few more things. Getting a deposit on every installation job you do, providing vacations and holidays for your employees, company policy handbook, absolutely critical in your company, and job costs in every job you have. Okay? Normally we'd add up points up and we'd see how you did. We don't have time to do that today, but do that when you get back home. And if you got less than 100 total points on it, don't even bother to go home. You're out of business. Okay? 1 to 200 needs significant improvement. The average is around 2 to 400. 600, 4 to 600 is good. 6 to 800 is excellent. And if you got more than 800 points when you get back home, give me a call and you can help me put on the next presentation. Okay? And one more thing I want to touch base with you on. This may be the most important thing I said all day long, and that's this. When I was a little boy, my favorite program on TV was Wide World of Sports. And my favorite program for the entire year was the Surfing Championships from Hawaii. If you ever watch those things, we got this 60-foot wave curling over like that, and that little bitty surfer down here, and I'd sit there, glued to my chair, white knuckles everywhere, thinking, man, I hope he doesn't slip, because if he does, he may never surface again. Well, you're at a multi-day conference right now. You've already been through 1 or 2 sessions this morning. Okay? Chances are when you walked out of your first session, something said in your head, gee, I need to do this. And when I went to the next session, gee, I need to do that too. Maybe you picked up something here that says, gee, I need to do that too. And pretty soon you're like that little guy, I got to do this. If I don't do all these things, I'm going to go out of business. And there's a certain truth to that. Okay? But in the midst of it all, keep your priorities in order. Keep your priorities in order. There's a simple little poem. You've heard it before. I modified it just a little bit, and it goes like this. 100 years from today, it won't matter how much money you made. It won't matter what kind of house you lived in, and it won't matter what kind of car you drove. The only thing that's going to matter 100 years from today is how much love you sowed into your spouse, into your kids, even into your customers. That's what changes lives from generation to generation. When I first went into business back in 1987, somebody shared a little pamphlet with me called The Tyranny of the Urgent. It's still available on the internet today. Called The Tyranny of the Urgent. And in that little pamphlet, it talked about the urgent things of life, and it talked about the important things of life. And what it said in that little pamphlet was this. It said the urgent things of life absolutely scream for your time. I mean, they scream for your time. And the really, really important things in life, you know what happens to them? They just kind of sit here and wait for you to make time for them. They won't say a word. They'll just sit there quietly and won't say a word. Okay? Now, after being away from your business for 2, 3, 4 days, some of you a week or more, and you go back in, first day, guess what's going to hit you when you walk through the front door? The urgent. Do you know why you were gone? We didn't get the bid out. The computer broke down. Sam quit, and I'm leaving too. Urgent. Whew. But you're going to go through a multi-day conference, and you learn lots of things that are really, really important to your business. You learn some things that other people are doing that could really help you, but they're important, but you got to make time for them. Okay? Now, those same principles of the urgent and the important carries over to our personal lives as well. Vast majority of the people are in here, at least a good bit of them are men, so I'm kind of talking to you right now. When you go home after a long day, you know what's really, really urgent for a lot of men? Okay? I want to go have a beer with my buddies. I want to go to the ball game. I want to go here. I want to go there. You know what's really, really important at the end of a long day? Sit down and talk to your spouse for a while. Go to Billy's ball game. Go to Susie's recital even though you hate piano. You know why? Those days, those years are going to pass, and they're going to pass quickly. I cannot tell you, over the last 32, 33 years across this country and Canada, how many business owners I've run into who have spent an entire lifetime, I don't mean a little bit, I mean an entire lifetime building a successful business. And they've done it. They're written up in the trade journals, they got the plaques on the wall, but you know what? Most of them, not all of them, most of them, it's cost them something. Many of them, it's cost them their health. Lots of them, it's cost them their spouse. And almost all of them, it's cost them those days when their kids were growing up. Yeah, I was going to come to your ball game, but I had this job started over here. I'd like to get there, but we can't. I know we're going to go on vacation next week, but this big job changed things, and we'll do it next year. And pretty soon, you know what? They're gone. They're gone. I don't know a single person, not one, who's ever been on their deathbed and looked up at the person next to them and said, you know what? Sure wish I'd spent more time at the office. Doesn't happen. Okay? Now, I'm not saying go home at 2 o'clock every afternoon and play with the kids. What I am saying is this: keep your priorities in order. Most of us went into business for one reason only, and that's to make provision for our families. But if you're not really, really, really careful, you know what happens? Your business becomes your life. It's not. It's a big part of your life, but it's not your entire life. Okay? A couple of things real quick. There's apparently a place on your app where you can rate the program today. Rate it well. Maybe we can come back next year. We'll see. If you want a full set of the slides, rather than just little short ones that are on the app, give me a card that says slides on the back. I'd be happy to send you a full set of slides on those things. And if anybody's interested in what we call a company overview, where I come to your business, spend 2 days, we model your company by department on the computer, find out what's making money, what's not making money, put a financial business plan together. If you have any interest in that, give me one of your cards that says overview on the back. I'd be glad to give you some call with some details. Okay, we are done. Have a great rest of the conference. Appreciate you being here.